Hello students, let us today learn the third part of the best Christmas present in the world. Already you have completed learning part 1 and part 2 of the chapter. In the first part, you have found that the narrator, he has bought one roll-top desk from a junk shop. Means second-hand roll-top desk was bought by the narrator. And when he was about to repair the roll-top desk, he found one letter. That letter was written by Jim, one British soldier, and he wrote it from Warfield to his wife Connie to narrate how beautifully British and Germans, two enemies during the time of First World War in 1914, they have celebrated Christmas. So in the second part, Jim was narrating each and every details of that celebration of Christmas during wartime, forgetting all enmity. Both armies, German and British, they were celebrating Christmas. So at the end of the letter, the second part was finished. After that, what did the narrator do? Did he give the letter to Mrs. Macpherson, or did he just kept the letter with him? Let us learn in the third part. Okay. First, let us read the part. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. So, Jim wrote the letter, and our narrator, he was reading the letter. He was becoming emotional. And then, when the letter was finished, he once again folded the letter and slipped it, means kept it, slided it inside the envelope again, kept it like it was earlier. Then the whole night he could not sleep. He kept awake, means he could not sleep the whole night. Why? Because he was thinking what to do next, how to find Mrs. Macpherson and how to give the letter, or what to do with the letter. And morning he knew that somehow he has to find Mrs. Macpherson and hand over the letter, because it was her husband's last letter and he wanted to go to Bridport. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. So he used his car. Drove means drive, drove, driven. You know it. Yes, driving a car. So going by a car, he wanted to find Mrs. Macpherson, and it was only a few miles away from his place. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. Do you remember the address? Address of Mrs. Macpherson? Yes, her address was 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. No? So he asked one boy who was walking with a dog where that Copper Beaches was. And the boy told him. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt out shell, the roof capping, the windows boarded up. So house number 12, that was burnt. Fire damaged the house. Already you got to know in roll-top desk that fire damaged the roll-top desk. So something happened in the house and it caught fire. And fire burnt the roof. That's why gap was there, widened roof was there, and windows were kept one on the other. Some piled up things were kept. Okay. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. Macpherson, because he does not know whether Mrs. Macpherson, the neighbors, would know or not. So he knocked at the door of next neighbor, and he wanted to ask, did you know one Mrs. Macpherson? Miss Macpherson is the title. So he asked, did you know one Mrs. Macpherson? And the man said, see, oh yes, said the old man in his slippers. The man was wearing slippers, and he said, yes, I know. And he said he knew her very well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle headed. But at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. So, how old was Mrs. Macpherson now? 101. And the man said that she has become muddle headed. Muddle headed means being confused. And he said, because she is so old, she should be confused. Because at the old age, people become like that, muddle headed. Okay? And she had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive, and the fireman had got her out just in time. So, Mrs. Macpherson, she did not use electric lights, and she used to have candles to light her house during evening time. Okay, and by chance, one candle might have caught fire in the house, and Mrs. Macpherson was inside, but luckily firemen helped her to go out of the house because the whole house was damaged by fire. And she thought that having electricity was very expensive. Expensive means costly. So she did not have any electricity in her house. And now she was in a nursing home, he told me. And the nursing home is Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. So, where is the nursing home? Nursing home is Dorchester Road and the other side of the town, and the name of the nursing home is Burlington House. Then the narrator found that Burlington House nursing home easily enough because it was not very difficult to find that Burlington House nursing home. There was paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. Do you remember? What day was it? Yes, that was Christmas Day. So the whole nursing home was decorated with papers and with Christmas tree, and everything was like Christmas celebration. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. So he told the people, or maybe in the reception, that he has come to hand over one Christmas gift to Mrs. Macpherson, and he is a friend of her. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. So he could see that whole nursing home was in celebration mode, and everyone was wearing paper hat on their head, means Christmas hat, and even the matron, the uh, nurse who is in charge of all, she was also wearing a hat, and they were celebrating. Then they were happy to see him there. She even offered me a mince pie. He was given one kind of sweet dish. She walked me along the corridor, and she guided him to Mrs. Macpherson through the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others. She told that we are celebrating, but Mrs. Macpherson did not join us. She is not here. She is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. So they have found that she has become very confused that day, and that's why they wanted her to take rest. And she had no family, no one visits. So I'm sure she will be only too pleased to see you. So this matron said that no family member, no friend visits Mrs. Macpherson. So she will be very happy when she would meet this narrator. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants at around and left me. And she took the narrator to Mrs. Macpherson's place where she was there. And Mrs. Macpherson was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into wispy bun. Bun is the hairstyle. You can see the picture how one knot type hair is there on her head. That is called the wispy bun, and her hair was clipped, pinned properly. She had silver white hair and her hair was grey, silver like hair. She was gazing out at the garden. Gazing means looking. She was looking out at the garden, and gaze is fixed look. Hello, I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. Means she did not understand who this fellow was, so one empty look was given by her. Happy Christmas, Connie, I went on. I found this. I think it's yours. And he wished her Merry Christmas, and he had taken her name and he wanted to give the gift, that letter inside the box. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face, and when the narrator was speaking, the lady was looking at his face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. Opening the tin box, he wanted to give the letter. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition. All of a sudden, her eyes became brighter. Wow, I know it as if recognition means coming to remembering to know or remembering the letter, and her face become suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. Suffused means her happiness was spread all over her face. Wow, like that. And she was so happy. I explained about the task, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. So the narrator wanted to tell that I bought this roll top desk, I got your letter like this and like that, but she was not listening. For a while she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips, and for a moment, for some time, she did not say anything, but she was touching the letter and she was as if patting the letter. She was as if showing her love to the letter with her fingertips and very softly. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Suddenly she held her visitor's hand, our narrator's hand. Her eyes were filled with tears, and from her eyes tears came out. You told me you would come home by Christmas, dearest. And she felt that the narrator is Jim himself. And Jim is her husband who was maybe killed during war, during First World War. And she said, you told me you would come home by Christmas, dearest, and here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim, dear, sit down. and she thought the narrator to be Jim, and she said, "Oh my God, Jim, you promised me that you will come by Christmas, and you have come finally. Come and sit with me." And I sat down beside her, and she kissed my cheek. She showed her love by offering one kiss. And uh, she said, "I read your letters so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me, and now you are. Now you are back. Now you can read it to me yourself, that letter. Would you do that for me?" So she said that every time she read the letter, she felt that Jim was nearby her. And this time she felt that Jim has come himself to read the letter for her. So she is requesting, "Will you please read the letter for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I would love that so much. And then perhaps we will have some tea. I have made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan." So she said that she has once again prepared her best Christmas cake for Jim, and it was having marzipan one sweet around the cake, and she knew that marzipan was very much loved by Jim. So with this the story ended. Michael Mopago is the writer of this story, and he has ended the story in such a way that the readers would not know what happened after that. So you are to guess what happened after that, and it is very pathetic story. You will feel sad for that lady because she was waiting for Jim all these years. How old is she? Yes, 101 years old, and she had been waiting for Jim, and finally this narrator has brought the letter, and she took him for Jim, and she was talking to him as if she was talking to her husband Jim. So let us end here. In our next class, we are going to learn some more about this particular part. Thank you very much.